Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Her Happy Mind, where I'm using my master's in positive psychology to teach you that happiness isn't luck, it's science. And on today's episode, where it's all about the connection between ADHD and intuition, especially in women. So I'm joined by Lynn from Glointuitive, who has been diagnosed with ADHD from the age of 9 years old, which is something we often don't see in girls. And now so many more women are being diagnosed later on in life after years of feeling overwhelmed, misunderstood, or honestly just disconnected from themselves and their true beings. And what I love about this conversation is that we're not just talking about ADHD, we're also talking about intuition and self trust. Like, how do you know if something in your intuition is it, or is it just anxiety or overthinking? And how do you reconnect with yourself if you feel like you've been in your head for so long and you haven't been listening to your gut feeling, or yeah, to your feelings in so long? How do you get back to that spot where you trust yourself again? So if you've ever felt like you don't fully trust yourself, this episode is definitely for you. Or share it with a friend, because your intuition isn't gone, it's just being quieted right now. And I can't wait for Lynn just to go over this with us and give us some more inspiration, some help, and some tools. So let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Her Happy Mind. I'm super excited to have Lynn's on the episode today. Like I mentioned, she's going to be going over her personal experience around ADHD and then becoming a licensed intuitive coach. And so I want her to introduce a little bit more about herself and her journey. So Lynn's, welcome to Her Happy Mind.
Thank you, Victoria. It is so lovely to be here.
I'm super excited to have you here. And I know that you were diagnosed with ADHD at a young age. So, what did that look like growing up for you, Linz? And can you introduce yourself a little bit more and the journey you've been on?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so you can hear my accent. I am South African. I live in Cape Town, and it's quite a funny thing. Who am I? I am I would say multi-passionate. There's a lot of layers to me. So I always find it so hard to describe that. I think it's a very kind of like my ADHD brain has a million different things. So basically, I am an entrepreneur. I help women in business grow their businesses. That's one part of me. And then the other part of me is that I am becoming a certified intuitive coach because this is something it is my true calling, I would say. And I was diagnosed with ADHD at 9 years old. I am now 38. So pretty rare. Most likely, most women are late diagnosed. They find out when they're in their 30s. Very, very rare that I, at 9 years old, was diagnosed because of many facets about being a woman with ADHD as well. So it was very interesting. I was very lucky. I had amazing parents who supported me so much. So I am so grateful for that because they allowed me to find my own path, with me and ADHD, that was incredibly important. I could not be put in a box. So I was very grateful for that. But it was very, very interesting being diagnosed with ADHD at 9 years old as a girl as well.
I can imagine, yeah, because I'm an elementary school teacher. So even for me at the
Mm.
age of 9, it's always a soft spot of like, okay, is it the behavior? Is it something more like neurological, like the development? So it was interesting when you told that to me as well. Was it your parents, or was it like the teacher, or how, like, yeah, it was just really early on. How did you know right away? Or they
Yeah.
knew?
So it was a teacher who
Okay.
picked it up in me, which is very, I think now things have obviously changed. There's a more awareness around women ADHD, like female ADHD, but 30 years ago there there definitely wasn't. So it was a very perceptive teacher
Mhm.
because how my ADHD presented was daydreaming. I was in the clouds. It was like it looked very quiet on the outside, and it still looks like that because of how I mask. So it was a very perceptive teacher that just picked up that I was just daydreaming all day long. And from there, she spoke to my parents, and then I got the diagnosis and carried on from there. So I got early intervention with a lot of support from my family, so I was very lucky.
Mhm.
But it was incredibly hard having ADHD as a girl 30 years ago. It made me feel very different and out of place. So for the women with ADHD out there listening, they may resonate with this, that I shape shifted and I started masking from a very early years of my life because I had a lot of shame around ADHD. It wasn't something that was educated around that it's okay and that you've got this beautiful brain. So I hid it, and I hid myself and my authentic self a lot. So I learned to become a masker. Um, and I mean, if you speak to people in my life now, they still can't believe that I have ADHD because I'm so good at hiding it.
I just find that so fascinating as well because ADHD, for people that are like, what is ADHD? It's the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And
Mhm.
usually we think of people like bouncing off the walls or people that can't sit still, but there's also another side of that too. Like you said, the daydreaming aspect of just completely being, it looks like you're checked out, but there's still a lot of activity going in your body or in your mind. And it's beautiful that you now today at 38 is picking up like, okay, I've always wanted to be or had this intuition of being an intuitive coach because for so long you had to hide that. So is that kind of what led you into this coaching of being like, okay, I want to truly find myself and listen to myself? Or was there something else along the way that led you into being an intuitive coach or at least getting certified now?
Yeah, it was my intuition. I can't quite pinpoint when it happened, but I have been a moth to a flame with intuition. It has just been something I have been totally obsessed with.
Mm.
And I didn't quite understand until probably a few years ago. But looking back at my life, I was always in search of my path and I took such big, bold moves and decisions in my life from 15 years old. And I just thought I was confident in decision making. Looking back, those were bold, intuitive decisions that I've made and big life decisions. So I was confident in that. And I've always been fascinated with depth work. I got 2 psychology degrees. All I wanted to do when I left school is learn psychology and just learn everything that I possibly could about psychology.
Mm.
And I've just always been really just drawn to depth work. And I didn't know much about intuition. And then I think when I started because I was also a teacher for 10 years, by the way. And then I moved into entrepreneurship. And I think with entrepreneurship, it's quite a spiritual journey on its own, in its own right. So I started to do a lot of personal development work alongside it, mindset work around being an entrepreneur. And that's kind of where it started landing for me. And I started to be like, oh my gosh, intuition, I love it. And it was just I was just obsessed with it from the beginning.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about yourself, being an entrepreneur is definitely a
Yeah.
spot to go into.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. And okay, so someone is listening to this. What does intuition in a way, like what does intuition mean if someone's like, I need a definition or a clear definition, Lance?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I see this as like there's 2 different parts to it. There's the woo-woo part where it's like the more spiritual side, and then there's the other side where it's a little bit more like neuroscientific psychology side. And in fact, I don't know that side very well, and that is a part that I'm dying to jump into. But how I would just describe intuition is truth. It's truth. And it is a way of you connecting, if you want to think of it in a spiritual way. And a lot of people have different ways of looking at it. But if you're wanting to see it in a spiritual way, it's connecting with your authentic self. If you believe in a power of the God or angels or connecting with a higher power or your higher self, it is a way that you can connect with them and communicate. And then on the psychology side, I'm this isn't my expertise, but it's the connection with, I would say, I know Dr. Tara Swart speaks about this, and you probably so good at this as well. It's the connection with your gut and your brain, and all the wisdom and experience that you have, and pattern recognition, and all the experiences that you have had previously, and picking up on that and saying, oh yes, that was good, that was bad. So it's almost that like wisdom knowledge of past experience as well. But there's a lot to it in
Mm.
different ways, and a lot of people are going to explain this differently, but the word is truth. It is always comes down to the truth, and your truth is your most authentic self, and it leads you, intuition is going to lead you back to your most authentic self, and
Mm.
who you were put on this earth, who you were put on this earth to be.
Ooh, I like that. Just having that one word, truth. And
Yeah.
I find it like more than ever difficult for like to finding your truth because there's so much like outside noise. As much as I love
Yes.
social media, and that's where we built both of our platforms, if you don't properly use social media, or if you just constantly like doom scroll or don't have the right like healthy and mindful feed, it can be very distracting of like who am I, what is it, my
So
gut
much.
feeling, is it just like what I'm getting influenced up like from other people, from influencers, from creators. So what are some common signs that you've noticed when people aren't listening to their intuition?
Yeah. So this is a lifelong journey, something that I struggle with as well. I think also this is something, I think the more intuitive you are, the more you second guess it.
Mm.
So a lot of intuitive people, whether you have ADHD, you're highly sensitive, you're just an intuitive person, neurodivergence, and very spiritual, a lot of the time, if you actually don't know how to develop it or harness it, or practice, because it's a skill and it's a mindset as well, trusting yourself, you will second guess it the most. And that was the journey that I went on, is that I was so intuitive, but I second guessed it so much and I overthought it so much. So um, your question was, excuse me, so I lost my train of thought, is how do you find if someone is not listening to their intuition? What are the kind of key kind of
Yes.
behaviors? Okay, sorry about that.
We're
I go
good.
off on tangents. So outsourcing their power. That's really what it is. So a lot of behaviors that you're going to find is they are going to most likely ask other people. You always know. What's stopping you is the fear. Okay, so like for an example, let's say I'm like, oh, I'm in this big job and I hate it and I want to start a business. You know what the answer is. You're just afraid about it. So what do you start doing? You look for validation outside of you. You start asking opinions. You start Googling. Um, you you make fear-based decisions. You say stack. You think that you don't know, and you're like, I'm confused and I'm lost. I don't know. And also one of the worst things at the moment that's making this 10 times worse is ChatGPT.
Mm.
Because ChatGPT, you are outsourcing your power to a machine. So ChatGPT AI is amazing, obviously, as a business owner for research and all the things. But when you start using an AI to ask questions, big questions, like what is my life purpose? Should I make this decision or not? You know you are not listening to your intuition, you're outsourcing. That's a very big one. So anytime you're outsourcing what you know, you ask opinions, you're trying to find it, that's when you're not listening. Another thing, a lot of noise out there. Oh, social media. Oh, social media, the noise on there, and ChatGPT. And that's going to rattle and make a lot of noise in your mind. And then you can't hear your intuition. You
Mhm.
can't hear it.
I think, yeah, I'd even think of the whole AI because yeah, there's just so many different opinions now, and it's like, okay, what do I actually want? Not what a robot thinks for me. What does like
Yeah.
my parents want? Like, what do I actually want? And as much as like you said, we pretty much know when we ask the question, like, right, should I get in this relationship? Should I leave? Should I go to school,
Mm-hmm.
back to school? Should I take this job? Should I leave this job? We want, yes, to make ourselves happy, but I think some of us do have that outside factor, right? We're very like tribal human beings. So we
Mm-hmm.
want people not to be exiled or to leave us by ourselves. So I think that's why ChatGPT is getting so big because it's like that
Yeah,
quiet noise of like, okay, I don't really have to ask anyone. No one really knows, but I am getting validation somewhere. And how
exactly.
does like okay, so let's say like you are using ChatGPT or you are using like other people as validation. How can you start reconnecting with your intuition again after you've ignored it for months or years?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a nuance there because you can't you do need outside counsel. You
Yeah.
need support. So absolutely. You want to go to your partner or your friend and talk something through, and they will most likely give you an opinion, and that's fine. That's it's you don't want to completely isolate yourself. It's fine to do that. But if you are finding that you're continuously asking the same question and trying to get validation from a lot of people, whether that's doom scrolling, whether that's ChatGPT, if you're finding you in what we call a ChatGPT loop with the same question, you know that you are not listening to your intuition, and it's fear that's stopping you, and you are trying to find some type of validation. Also, that gets you into analysis paralysis and gets you stuck for months and months, even years. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that, but it's not being spoken about yet. That's what my intuition is picking up on, as well as people are struggling. They're stuck in these chat GPT loops they can't get out of because they're
Yeah.
just so in analysis paralysis, and they're not listening to themselves. So something that there's lots of ways to kind of reconnect to your intuition. Um, Most people know this if they've Googled and they've spoken about it. It's getting quiet. It is getting out of your head, out of your head, and getting into your body. Your intuition is going to speak to you in a different way, and it's different for lots of people. I'll explain how kind of my intuition speaks to me, but it is just getting quiet in your body. And I think so many people are disconnected from their intuition now because the world is so fast. AI is making us go faster, and the faster we go, the more disconnected we are, and the more people are feeling lost and losing their purpose and shape shifting for other people. So it is just coming back to yourself, quieting the brain and the noise and the outside everything, and just finding ways to do that.
Yeah, like we live in such a fast-paced world. And it's like, okay, just like going outside or meditating, and it's crazy how it can take like 2 minutes of our day, right? Just do a 2-minute routine, a meditation before going inside after work or going for a walk. But we get, like you said, stuck, or we just doing these loops of like we love our routine so much of like, okay, we get home and I just did a reel about this. What's your after work routine? Because like your brain needs to get out of work routine and then back into your home life or your creative life. Like we both have businesses, so it's I have to work
Yeah.
and then I have to come back and do my business. But there's certain why there's certain brain parts where I'm like, I don't need this anymore when I get home, or I need
Yeah.
more of this. So for you, like, especially since I work with the younger public, but I also work with other teachers, and I'm sure you have like are going to be working with clients, like, how do you know or how do you differentiate, okay, this is my intuition versus anxiety or like overthinking? Like, where is that line of like, no, that's your intuition, or like, no, you're just overthinking and that's anxiety? Or is there like a combination of how they all loop together?
Okay, I love that question so much because it's one of the biggest questions, and it's one of the hardest things because we second guess our intuition. But the answer is so simple. And another thing that comes in there is also trauma. A lot of people are like, but how do I know the difference between, is it intuition or is it my past trauma? There's a lot of that. Is it wishful thinking? Is it intuition? So then it is such a simple answer. And the way it works is it's getting quiet, because you will not hear it if you're not quiet. But at the same time, is if you don't answer it, it will get louder. So one of the biggest difference between whether it's your intuition, which is truth, and is it overthinking, fear, trauma, emotion, is that intuition is very calm and simple. So it is going to drop in. There's different ways that intuition come into your body as well. Um, but it is going to be simple, and it's going to be calm. There is nothing, there's no urgency attached to it, even if it's warning you about something. Okay, so there's different types of intuitions. There's like warning you of like, don't go down that alley. That's like red light
Yeah.
intuition, red flag. It is still going to be calm. It's still going to go, don't go down there. and it's going to be so clear. If it's green light intuition, it's going to be like, quit your job. But it's not, there's going to be no like anxiety or urgency. What happens after that is then the overthinking. It's like, oh, but what if, what if this, what if that? That's when the overthinking comes in. So it's like it comes in first, and it could be a split second, and then a second later, you in your head, you're like, oh, but yeah, should I not? That's overthinking. That's fear. Um, it's also, it speaks to you in your body. Fear does as well. Overthinking does as well. Trauma obviously does as well, but it feels clear and expansive as well. There's a very clear difference. It's fear feels contractual and urgent. Intuition feels expansive.
Ooh, I loved how you answered that question because it's like, okay, so you have your intuition, and then usually what follows that is the anxiety or the overthinking of the what ifs, the fears, the negative, the worst case scenarios. What will people
Mm-hmm.
think of me? So getting quiet, I think that's like, if you take anything away, it's getting quiet and truly listening to yourself
Yeah.
is so, so important. And especially with everything that's going on in the world, is having that routine to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to ADHD,
Yeah.
especially in women. Do you know like what? Because I'm just curious, like you were young diagnosed as well, so I'm just curious, why do you think it is hard to pull that out of women? How, like, why are they always later diagnosed? And because
Mm.
males are usually right on early on, but why does it take so long for women to be diagnosed with ADHD?
Oh, this is such a good question. And I am just so thrilled that there's so much awareness around female ADHD now, because I felt so alone when I was a kid at school with ADHD. I was the only girl. I had to be medicated. And back in the day, like 30 years ago, there was one medication. It was Ritalin, and there was no long acting anything. You had to take one in the morning and you had to take one at 10 a.m. So I had to have my like teachers administering it in front of my, oh, it was very shameful. And so I am just so happy that there's so much awareness around it now. And I think the reason why it was so misdiagnosed in women is because our ADHD, and this is generalized, people experience it in different ways, but from my experience is that my hyperactivity is in my head. It's if you think of like the general kind of ADHD where it's like jumping around and can't sit still and impulsive and all that, like almost like the bad behavior at school. Usually a male at school is diagnosed and is kind of like stereotyped that way. That's all happening in my mind
Mm.
internally. And with a lot of that, there was a lot of shame around it. Like, why am I different? Why can't I fit into this school box? There, you mask it and you find ways to hide it, and that's what I did. But that all that jumping around and that impulsivity and the
Yeah.
shouting and the noises are all happening in my mind. It's just not seen by others.
Yeah, and that's
So,
what, yeah.
yeah. So going back to that, it's misdiagnosed because it's misread, it's misunderstood. And then what happens is that I've noticed this in my own ADHD is that now, in your 30s, 35 plus, hormones are in play and everything changes then. And then all the things that you were like, what, you're like, I don't know, I'm just different. Now you're realizing, oh my gosh, the symptoms are real. And there's now awareness. And I can see my ADHD symptoms have definitely gotten worse now that I'm 38, going into close to perimenopause and all of that. So I think that's where people are now going, oh gosh, like I actually do have ADHD.
Wow. Yeah. That never even crossed my mind about, okay, ADHD with women hormones and different
Mm.
stages in your life. And was it hard like in elementary, like making friends? Like was it something like you really didn't enjoy like was it hard to be you? And then how did you, because now you are being that intuitive coach and you have
Yeah.
more awareness. Like was there a point where, okay, yeah, I didn't enjoy myself, but then something happened and you're like, no, I'm going to actually work with my brain instead of against it?
Yeah. So I was, as I said, I was a brilliant shapeshifter. I'm very social. So I did have lots of friends, but I was good at molding into whatever was that the room was. Um, And I'm what part of my personality is that I am energetic, I'm bubbly, I'm magnetic. It's a big part. Like a lot of ADHD women kind of identify with that. So I was able to be social and make friends, but I was able to shapeshift for that, in whatever room. Um, and how I started work, and I think this came now, like recently, like the last 3 years, I started to realize how to work with my brain because just getting older, having more wisdom, personal development, starting a business, the personal development comes. And I started to realize, what can I do to actually start working with my brain? And one thing that I did I quit sugar. In fact, I've reduced sugar in my diet because sugar and an ADHD brain, not good. And that has really, really helped. A lot of ADHD women get food noise, which means they're susceptible to binge eating, eating disorders as well, because it's a dopamine seeking behavior. So one of the things that I did is just reduce sugar in my brain. So to give my brain a best like fighting chance as well. Also, reducing sugar has allowed me to access my intuition even more because food is food noise, and it can actually drown out your intuition, because your intuition can sit in your gut. So you wanting to feel, eat well as well, so that you can really access that intuition. So I do that. I do a lot of meditation. There is a nuance with kind of meditation and ADHD women as well. And I'm very aware of this, is that a lot of ADHD women say, but I can't sit still and meditate for 10 minutes. My brain's too noisy. So one of the things that you can do, and what I do, is you find some type of movement. I love dancing. So I will dance to access my intuition. And that's a beautiful thing for ADHD women, anything, dance or movement or walking or painting, because you don't have to sit still. And sometimes sitting still is hard for us. So eating well, exercising, and just doing a lot of meditation, and just be kind to myself as well. And honoring the fact that I am going to unmask and become my most authentic self, and that's okay.
Yeah, you brought up a good point too. It's like not, yes, you have to be still, but you don't have to be still in that, like still can be painting, dancing. That's still calmness because it's bringing that
Yes.
sense of relief, that sense of trust and peace to your body. So it's experimenting different things of, okay, yes, I'm moving, but it's bringing me an internal peace. And if we can bring it back together, like, okay, and I love how you like cut out sugar because I think that's like so smart. But and that food noise is a real
Yeah.
thing, and especially when we're talking about intuition and like gut health, I tell people too, I'm like, if you have an unhealthy gut, then how are you going to be making healthy choices? Because if you're trusting gut feelings, but you're used to sugar or processed foods, like what what health is your gut getting to give you your best results? So I think that was really important is diet, and
Yeah.
everyone's diet's going to be differently, but how can you or what do you think or how do you think ADHD can impact someone's ability to trust their intuition? Because I'm sure it's not that difficult. It's not that, sorry, it is difficult when you do have ADHD and you're like, I'm going to listen to my intuition, and then is there certain things that it impacts them even more? It's even more difficult for them to tune in?
Absolutely. Speaking from experience, is a lot of ADHD women identify as being highly intuitive. They identify as being sensitive and empathic,
Mm,
and lots of empathic people and that sensitivity. And I think sensitivity is also misunderstood. Yes, it's sensitivity and emotion, but it's a sensitivity to energy.
mm,
So they are almost have these open hearts, and they just take in so much of other people's energy. So a lot of ADHD women recognize that they're very perceptive. They can read rooms. They get intuitive pings. And they're just very perceptive to other people's body language. They're very good at pattern recognition. So that's a
mm,
very big, big part. Like if you think of like intuition based in about like psychology and the actual like neuroscience of it. So very good at pattern recognition.
mm,
But because we are so intuitive, and often this is the double-edged sword, is that a lot of ADHD or a lot of intuitive people second guess the most.
Mm.
because you're receiving so much information. And if ADHD women are receiving so much information all the time, we pick up so much more in our environment. So there's a lot of overwhelm there. And it's like, you're picking up someone else's energy, your own energy. You have a very vast array of emotion. There's a lot going on there. Plus, getting gaslit as well, because intuition is going to speak truth. Sometimes the society and the world does not want you to see truth. So if you're going to speak up and you've seen something in your environment where it's not right, like something in your environment, someone's awful, you just picked up some bad vibe and you speak up on that and it gets gaslit, you are going to stop trusting yourself. There's so many reasons as well. I think, we doubt ourselves as well. There's a lot of like, what's wrong with me? Why am I different? Why can't I fit in this box? Why can't I follow through? Why can't I stick with this job? And there's a lot of that. And I think the fact that we struggle to follow through as well is we stop trusting ourselves. So self-trust is the muscle that needs to be built to trust the intuition and be able to follow through with those intuitive pings. And that's the one thing that we struggle with the most. I know I struggle with self-trust so much.
Mm.
And there's this whole thing about like ADHDers, they can't follow through with things. And it's like an executive dysfunction thing and all of that and dopamine. And I get that, absolutely. But I also believe that because ADHD women are so intuitive, that they know that when they're somewhere and it's not right,
Mm.
they're gonna leave that and go to the next thing. So I feel like because we're so intuitive, there's some things we don't follow through and because we know it's not right for us.
I feel like after this conversation, I know exactly why you're going into an intuition like certificate and being a coach because it just shows how much as a woman self-doubt, trusting ourselves, the
Mm,
gaslit, especially more and more women are in careers now and professional and high up in companies. And
yeah,
if and I feel that sometimes I walk into a room and I'll just turn to my twin sister. I'm like, not the vibe. Like, no, like,
exactly.
totally didn't get that vibe online or all this thing. So I feel like it's such a strength, but like what I've been hearing over and over, it's like you need to find that spot again. You need to reconnect with yourself again. And sometimes that takes a coach or that takes someone to truly understand yourself of is that intuition? Is that distraction? Is that okay, how can I overthink less? Okay, do I dance? Do I paint? Like to really come back and find yourself after all these years. And before we like close off this call, even though I feel like I could probably talk to you for another few hours because I have so many calls, but we'll probably have like a part two or something because I know I didn't ask you
Lovely.
all the questions that I wanted to today, but can you give us, I know you gave us a few more takeaways, but what's maybe one small way someone can start listening to themselves more this week that you would recommend or an habit they could include or something that they can do to be like, okay, I'm going to challenge myself to listen a little bit more about to myself this week.
Absolutely. So, learning to trust your intuition, self-trust is one of the biggest things because your intuition is going to come in.
Yes.
And you are then like, okay, can I trust myself to make the decision based on this? Okay, so self-trust is so, so important. So it's learning how to hear your intuition is a skill. So it is a skill you have to constantly keep um, finessing, and then the trust and then self-trust is a muscle.
Mm.
So something that is really great that you can do is start really get off the so stop doom scrolling. Okay.
Yeah.
Stop. Just that is just going to disconnect you so much from your intuition. You're going to have so much clarity. You will have like an intuitive ping coming in and have all the clarity.
Mm.
You're going to go into your phone and doom scroll and that's gone. So stop, just get away from the screens. I know it's not possible to get away from screens entirely, but give yourself something that can get you away from the screen. Whether it is breathing, it's meditation, whether you want to dance, move, stretch, anything, just get away from the screen. Then start really assessing. Don't overthink it. If you have something come through you and it's calm and very direct, a few words. So let's say it's like, go to the park today. And you feel that coming in and it's calm and there's no urgency attached. You're like, oh, okay. Write it down. Write your pings down. And then start honoring the small ones because you don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to honor this big ping, quit my job, leave the country and go somewhere else because your nervous system will not be able to handle that. It's a trust muscle. So start practicing little pings like, oh, what you want to eat tonight, or just small little ones and try and honor those. So like I had one a few months ago, go to yoga. And that's not going to be a detrimental to my life that if I go to yoga or not, but I followed that ping and I was like, best decision ever. So start small and it reduces the kind of nervous system, fight or fright if it's a big one. And then you start building that up. Also, a regulated nervous system is a beautiful place for intuition to come through. So finding ways that are going to regulate your nervous system, that is how you're going to get a clear line to your intuition. A fight or flight nervous system is going to block your intuition.
Absolutely. Whew, okay, and I like to end my calls, my episodes with this one question. So, Linz, if you can answer this for us, but what
Yeah.
does having a happy mind mean to you?
Oh, so much joy,
Mm.
peace, so much peace. And I feel like there is nothing higher than joy and peace. Peace is one of the most incredible feelings. And I think happiness is what brings you there. Happiness is authentically living your life authentically, unapologetically. If you can do that, you're going to be the happiest person ever.
Thank you. Well, Linz, thank you so much for coming on our today's episode. And where could everyone find you if they'd like to follow you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on Instagram as Glointuitive. That's where I hang out the most. I've got some ideas of also starting a YouTube channel because I've got too much to talk about. So I'm just like, I need my voice to be somewhere where it's not short, sharp videos. So, but right now I'm hanging out on Glointuitive on Instagram.
Well, Linz, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Everyone go follow her because I learned a lot today and I cannot wait for you to just share more about, being finally a coach and explaining more about how people can become your clients because I think what you're doing is amazing and the world needs more coaches like you. So, Linz, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Victoria. This was amazing.